Imagine, if you will, a world that was very different from ours, a place where humankind was new and the earth was fresh. In Genesis 6, we find ourselves drawn into a world that was alive with creation. But now, shadows start to form upon it. Picture this world as one that had been crafted in great detail by God's own hand. Every mountain, every river, every tree, it was all meticulously arranged, and the beauty of this creation was meant to be a place where humankind could live in harmony with God. Now, envision that over time, humankind began to grow, not just in numbers, but also in distance from the Creator. The earth, once so full of peace and purpose, was starting to fill with chaos. As people spread out, so did their own ways and desires, until the world became a place where thoughts and actions leaned more and more toward wickedness. It's as if the brightness that once illuminated the earth was starting to dim. God, looking upon this earth with deep sadness, saw that the people were choosing to live in ways that were far from the beautiful harmony he intended. Imagine for the first time, the great Creator experiencing this sorrow, seeing what he had made slipping into darkness. God's heart was grieved. The scripture describes this grief almost as if God's own heart felt a kind of regret over the creation of humankind. Imagine what it would be like to create something beautiful, only to see it turning into something unrecognizable. But amid this darkness, there was one flicker of hope. His name was Noah. Picture Noah as a man who stood out, a beacon of faithfulness and righteousness in a world that seemed to have forgotten these things. God looked upon Noah and saw in him a man who was not swayed by the darkness around him. He was a man who walked with God, who lived in such a way that he was pleasing to his Creator. Because of this, God decided to make Noah the center of a plan that would change the course of the world. Imagine hearing God speak to Noah, telling him something no one had ever heard before. God revealed that he would bring a great flood upon the earth, a flood so immense that it would cover everything. But Noah was to build an ark, a vessel unlike anything that had been seen before. He was given precise instructions, details about the wood to use, the size, the dimensions, and how to construct it. Picture Noah, taking in these instructions, perhaps bewildered but filled with a faith that overcomes doubt. Imagine the work that lay before him, gathering materials, preparing the wood, each cut and every nail contributing to something the world had never witnessed, a vessel of salvation in a time of impending judgment. And so, Noah began his work, hammer by hammer, plank by plank. Day by day, he labored, preparing for something no one else could see. Can you imagine what it must have been like for Noah and his family, surrounded by a society that looked on in confusion, perhaps even mocking this massive project? Yet Noah continued, driven by the voice of God and the promise that he and his family would be spared. As he worked, animals began to arrive, another remarkable sight. Pairs of every creature, great and small, arrived just as God had commanded. Picture these animals, obedient to an unseen command, making their way to the ark as though they, too, understood that something extraordinary was about to take place. Genesis 6 invites us to marvel at these firsts: a flood, an ark, a gathering of animals. It paints a picture of God's justice tempered by mercy, a vision of judgment, but also of salvation through faith and obedience. Imagine standing at the edge of a colossal structure, the ark, now fully built, looming above the ground like a fortress of wood. Genesis 7 brings us here, to a moment filled with anticipation, suspense, and the unknown. Picture Noah and his family as they stand before this enormous vessel, looking at the ark that has taken years of work, each piece carefully constructed with obedience and purpose. Now, the time has come. The rain is near, and God is about to fulfill his word. God speaks to Noah, telling him and his family to enter the ark. The words are urgent, filled with finality. Imagine the weight of this command. It's not just a casual invitation, but a call to step into the shelter of God's protection, leaving behind everything familiar. With them, Noah brings every kind of animal. 2 by 2, they file into the ark, a procession of life. Picture the incredible variety: elephants and eagles, tigers and sparrows, all entering side by side. There's a sense of wonder as creatures that would normally never travel together now follow a divine call, entering this massive ark for shelter. Once Noah, his family, and all the animals are inside, something remarkable happens. God himself closes the door. Imagine the sound of that door sealing shut, the final barrier between those within and the world outside. The closing door is like a seal on the promise that God has made to Noah, a boundary between life and the impending flood. It's as if the very hand of God gently but firmly shuts them in, enveloping them in a space of safety and mercy. Then, the rain begins. At first, it might have been just a few drops, perhaps a soft pattering on the wooden roof of the ark. But those drops soon turn into a downpour, and the skies open up with a ferocity no one had ever experienced before. The windows of heaven, the Bible says, were opened, and the fountains of the deep burst forth. Imagine rain not just falling from above, but surging from the earth itself, water pouring and swelling with unstoppable force. Picture the earth as the water rises, familiar landscapes, hills, and valleys now vanishing under waves. Rivers overflow, fields disappear, and trees are swept away. The entire world transforms, covered by an endless rising sea. The ark, built with careful hands and guided by divine instructions, now begins to float. Imagine the sway and creak of the massive vessel as it lifts, no longer bound to the earth but now bobbing upon this new, vast ocean. Inside the ark, Noah and his family listen to the sounds around them: the steady beat of rain on the roof, the groaning of the wooden hull as it adjusts to the water, and perhaps the quiet sounds of the animals as they settle into their safe haven. There's an atmosphere of awe and perhaps even fear as they realize the magnitude of what is happening outside. Everything they knew, the entire world, is now submerged, but they are safe, kept alive by God's promise and protection. The rains do not relent. Day after day, the downpour continues, covering even the highest mountains, until nothing is left visible but the endless waters. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain falls without stopping. Imagine the endless waves stretching as far as the eye can see, a landscape without borders, without life, except for the ark floating in the midst of it all, a lone vessel carrying the seeds of a new beginning. Genesis 7 takes us through these powerful images, painting a story of destruction, but also of preservation, of judgment, but also of mercy. It's a chapter filled with contrasts: the relentless rain against the steadfastness of the ark, the world submerged while Noah and his family float above it, held by faith in God's promise. It's a reminder that even when the world seems to be washed away, God's faithfulness remains as sure as the ark riding the waves. Imagine the ark, still and silent, floating upon a vast and boundless sea with no land in sight. Inside, Noah, his family, and all the animals wait. Days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, surrounded by nothing but water stretching endlessly, with no end to this journey in sight. Genesis 8 opens with a powerful moment. And God remembered Noah. Think of that. Of God remembering his promise, of his loving attention turning toward the ark. It's a phrase filled with hope, like a light breaking into the long, uncertain darkness. And then, a wind begins to blow across the waters, a gentle but persistent force stirring the vast ocean, starting the process of receding. Imagine the waves responding, slowly shrinking as the waters begin to retreat, following the invisible hand of God's command. Day by day, the ark, once adrift with no destination, feels the shift as the water lowers, revealing a hint of the earth below. Eventually, the ark comes to rest upon the mountains of Ararat, settled as if placed there by a careful hand. But the land is not fully dry yet, and Noah remains within, waiting patiently. Imagine the quiet within the ark, a stillness interrupted only by the sounds of the animals and the occasional groan of the vessel. Noah, looking out, must have felt the anticipation, a yearning to step out and feel solid ground again, but choosing to wait for God's timing. As the days pass, Noah decides to send out a raven, watching it fly over the waters, searching for a place to land. The raven, strong and resilient, flies back and forth, but there is no place for it to settle, and it does not return. Then, Noah sends out a dove, a bird of gentleness and hope. Imagine Noah watching as it flutters away from the ark, circling above the waters in search of dry ground. But the dove finds none and returns to the ark, where Noah gently receives it back into safety. Another week passes, and Noah sends the dove again. This time, the bird returns with something precious, a freshly plucked olive leaf in its beak. Can you picture the joy in that tiny green leaf? A sign of new life emerging from the waters, a symbol of hope and rebirth. Noah must have felt his heart lift, seeing this small but significant piece of evidence that the earth was coming back to life. There was hope, a promise that dry ground was near. After another week, Noah sends out the dove once more, and this time, it does not return. Imagine the quiet joy, the sense of freedom in knowing that life beyond the ark was possible once again, that the earth was ready to receive them. And so Noah, ever patient, waits until God himself speaks, saying, "Go out of the ark, you and your family, and every living thing with you." Now picture that first step outside, the floodwaters finally gone, the world washed clean and new. The air is fresh, the ground solid beneath their feet, and Noah's family, along with every creature, emerges from the ark, stepping into this renewed world. As they look around, they find themselves in a world that is both familiar and transformed, a world that has been given a new beginning, purified and refreshed. In response, Noah builds an altar to the Lord, a place of worship and gratitude, and he offers sacrifices to God. Imagine the smoke rising from the altar, curling upward, a tangible expression of thanksgiving reaching heavenward. God receives this offering with a promise, a commitment to never again flood the earth in this way. He places a blessing upon Noah and his family, declaring that the cycles of the earth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, will continue without end. Genesis 8 concludes with this beautiful, hopeful moment. God's promise of faithfulness, a vow to keep creation and humanity in his care. Imagine the colors of the sunset that evening, the peace that must have filled Noah's heart, and the sense of beginning anew, knowing that God had preserved them and had set his promise upon this new chapter of life on earth. Imagine standing in a fresh, renewed world. Noah and his family are breathing in the crisp air, gazing out at this untouched earth, reborn from the waters. Genesis 9 opens with a powerful blessing as God speaks to Noah and his sons, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. and fill the earth. Picture this moment. God's words filling the air with purpose, as if he is inviting them to cultivate and bring life to every corner of this renewed world, much like his original command to Adam and Eve. As Noah listens, God gives him and his family dominion over the earth and every creature upon it. Imagine the animals, all creatures great and small, that had once journeyed with Noah on the ark. Now they roam free across the land. But there is a change, a new awe, almost like a respectful distance between human and animal. God has placed the fear and respect of humanity within the creatures, ensuring a balance in this new order. Yet alongside this authority, God establishes a covenant, a promise that speaks of both responsibility and respect for life. God tells Noah that they may eat from the creatures of the earth, as they did the plants, yet with a reverent condition. They are not to consume blood, for in it is the life of the creature. Imagine the significance of this. God is reminding Noah and his family of the sacredness of life itself, that every life is known and valued by him. It's as though God is weaving reverence into the very fabric of their survival, teaching them that life should be treated with care and respect. But then, God makes a monumental promise, an everlasting covenant with Noah, his descendants, and every living creature. Picture God speaking with deep assurance, declaring that he will never again destroy the earth with a flood. Imagine the weight of that promise. It's a vow of steadfast mercy, a guarantee that creation will never again face such a judgment. To seal this promise, God gives a sign, a symbol that will forever mark this covenant with all life on earth. He places a rainbow in the sky, its colors stretching in a magnificent arc across the heavens. Imagine the awe as Noah and his family look up and see the first rainbow ever to appear, shimmering with every color, a breathtaking display set against the clouds. This is more than just beauty. It is a message written in light, a reminder of God's promise. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, God says, "I will remember my covenant." Picture the security in that. The rainbow as a symbol that speaks of God's faithfulness every time it appears. Whenever they see it, they will remember that God has pledged to keep the earth, to uphold life, to ensure that the cycles of nature continue. This chapter of Genesis also speaks to the human side of life after the flood. Noah, now a man of the soil, plants a vineyard and grows grapes. After harvesting, he makes wine, and in a moment of vulnerability, he becomes intoxicated and lies uncovered in his tent. It's an image of humanity's imperfections, even in this new beginning. When Noah's son Ham sees him in this state, he acts disrespectfully, exposing his father's shame to his brothers. Shem and Japheth, however, respond with honor and cover their father, walking backward with a cloak to preserve his dignity. When Noah awakens and learns of what happened, he blesses Shem and Japheth for their respect and integrity, while issuing a curse upon Ham's lineage for the dishonor he showed. This event is a reminder that even in this fresh start, humanity still carries its flaws. Yet, amid these human moments, God's promise and faithfulness remain undiminished. Genesis 9 closes with the picture of Noah's descendants, the beginning of new generations who will fill the earth. Noah lives to see many years after the flood, his life becoming a bridge between the world that was and the world that is now. Through him and his family, a new era begins, an era marked by God's mercy and the rainbow in the clouds. A constant reminder that even as life continues, God's covenant of protection endures. Now, imagine the world slowly filling with people once again, families growing, generations spreading out, and the earth coming alive with human voices, laughter, and bustling communities. Genesis 10, known as the Table of Nations, offers a view of humanity's early family tree. showing how Noah's descendants began to branch out and settle in different lands. Each name, each lineage, carries a sense of story and purpose, tracing the roots of nations as they begin to shape the world. From Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, comes a diversity of people, each branch representing a unique culture, language, and land. Picture the movement as groups break away, venturing into new territories, establishing cities, and making a home in the vast, open world. This is a time of exploration and settlement, a journey of discovery as each family finds its place on the earth. Imagine Japheth's descendants first. His lineage spreads out into the distant coastlands, reaching lands that would become known for their seafaring and exploration. They are people drawn to the edges of the known world, filling lands and islands across the waters, establishing communities that grow into mighty nations. From Japheth come the people who would inhabit places to the north and west, and their names echo across the future as nations rooted in trade, travel, and adventure. Then, we have Ham's descendants. From his line comes a remarkable variety of cultures and places, many settling in lands that are warm and fertile. Picture them inhabiting the rich valleys, the lush regions near rivers like the Nile and the Euphrates. This branch of Noah's family gives rise to places we recognize: the powerful cities of Egypt, Babylon, and Nineveh. From Ham's line come the Canaanites, who would later inhabit the land that holds so much significance in the story of Israel. These are cities and cultures that will have lasting impact, places of wonder, and eventually conflict. But among Ham's descendants is a name that stands out: Nimrod. Genesis 10 describes Nimrod as a mighty hunter, a figure who would establish some of the first great cities. Imagine Nimrod, a strong and ambitious leader, building his kingdom in the land of Shinar. It is here that he establishes cities like Babel, places known for strength and a pursuit of greatness. Nimrod's reputation as a mighty hunter before the Lord suggests a character who sought both influence and adventure, a leader whose name would be remembered. Finally, we have the descendants of Shem, from whom the line of God's chosen people would emerge. Shem's family branches out to the east, filling lands that would come to hold the roots of faith. From this line come the people who will one day be known as the Semitic peoples, including the lineage that leads to Abraham and eventually to the nation of Israel. Imagine Shem's descendants carrying with them the traditions of Noah, a heritage of walking closely with God, and settling in lands where worship and covenant would one day shape the world. As Genesis 10 unfolds, we see not just a list of names, but the beginning of a vast, interconnected tapestry of nations. Imagine the diversity and color of this tapestry, with each thread representing a different family, a unique language, a distinct culture. The world is becoming populated, rich with variety and complexity. Each family group carries its own stories, memories of the flood, and the promise of the rainbow. There's a sense of destiny, as if each line of Noah's descendants is spreading the knowledge of this new world, carrying within them the remembrance of God's mercy and the hope of the promise. This chapter is a reminder of humanity's shared origins, that despite their differences, each nation can trace its roots back to Noah and the Ark. Genesis 10 sets the stage for the future story of God's relationship with all nations, a story that will continue to unfold as these descendants spread, grow, and eventually encounter one another in the pages of history. Imagine a world where all people speak the same language, where every word and idea flows freely without barriers. Genesis 11 takes us to a plain in the land of Shinar, where humanity has gathered with one unified purpose. Picture the people coming together, their voices blending in a common tongue, their ambitions growing as they look around at this vast open land. It's a time of energy, unity, and a shared vision, a vision to make a name for themselves, to reach the heavens. With this united spirit, they decide to build a city with a tower that will reach to the sky itself. Imagine the scene. People laying the foundations, gathering bricks made of clay and mortar, stacking them one by one. It's a remarkable project, the first of its kind. The tower rises higher with each passing day, a symbol of human ambition and achievement. As you look upon this tower stretching toward the clouds, you sense the boldness in their hearts, their desire to create something that would make them unforgettable. But God sees what is unfolding from his heavenly view. He sees the unity, the ambition, and the potential for great things. But he also sees the pride growing within them. They have chosen to make this tower as a monument to themselves, not to honor their Creator. It's a way of saying, we will reach the heavens on our own. We will make our name great. Imagine God watching with concern, knowing that while unity is powerful, it can also be dangerous when used for self-glorification. And so, God decides to act. Imagine him coming down to see this city and its tower, observing this creation firsthand. It's almost as if he's walking among the people, seeing their plans and understanding the consequences of their intentions. God recognizes that, if left unchecked, nothing will be impossible for them. But this path could lead humanity far from him, deep into their own pride and self-sufficiency. Then, in a moment that would change history, God chooses to confound their language. Imagine the sudden shift as words that once connected them now divide them. People try to communicate, but their words no longer make sense to each other. Confusion spreads like wildfire through the crowd. Teams working side by side now find themselves unable to understand one another, their plans falling apart as their language fragments into many different tongues. Picture the frustration, the bewildered faces, the abandoned tools, and the half-finished tower as communication breaks down completely. The once unified people begin to scatter, each group moving away from Shinar to find their own land, carrying their new languages with them. They spread across the earth, forming nations and cultures, each group now distinct and separate. The grand project is abandoned, the tower left as a relic of their ambition, a reminder of a time when humanity sought to reach the heavens on their own terms. From this event, the place becomes known as Babel, which means confusion. The tower itself stands as a silent monument to the limits of human pride and the importance of humility before God. Genesis 11 reminds us that while humanity is capable of great things, their plans are best carried out with reverence and alignment with God's purpose. Through the scattering of languages, God has set the foundation for diversity among the nations. Each language, each culture, and each land becomes a unique part of the world's unfolding story, creating a tapestry of humanity that is varied yet still connected in origin. The chapter closes with this dispersion of people, each carrying memories of the tower, the unity they once had, and the humbling reminder of how quickly it can be lost. Genesis 11 sets the stage for the story that will follow, a story of how God will call one man, Abraham, to be the beginning of a people set apart for his purposes. But for now, the nations are scattered, each finding its place in the vast world, carrying a new language and a new understanding of humility before God.